Okay, now for today's topic, number 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. Number 6 is how to begin the interview. Number 7, how to ask good questions. Number 8, how to probe, how to do probing. Probing means to ask more questions in order to know the details. Number 9 is a question that you should avoid. And number 10 is how to maintain neutrality throughout the process of interviewing. You must not side with the interviewer, or you must not oppose his or her opinion. You need to maintain your neutrality. So we go first to a research question, a discussion question, number 6. Okay. All right. Okay. Yeah, somebody is filling in the drinks. All right. Okay. So number 6. So how to begin the interview? Okay, first, you need to know that respondents are selected using, the techniques that we learned before, snowballing, purposive, and so on. Okay, and in qualitative study, the concerns are not on how representative the samples are, but rather on the potential of each respondent to contribute to development and understanding of the phenomenon. Okay, so what does it mean? It means that when we do the interviewing, we need to select respondents, those who can answer the interview. All right. So in order to select them, we look for individuals who can answer, who have experienced the phenomenon. Okay, so what is our topic? If our topic is about self-directed learning, so we're going to look for people who have experience in that. Okay, that's the first requirement. And the second requirement, according to Merriam, is those who can articulate his or her experience, those who can speak, those who can narrate their experience, those who can communicate well. Yeah, because we get the information from there. All right. Okay, now we go to the next slide. Okay, the things that a researcher should bear in mind, the things that you need to remember. First, so when you speak, you use language clear to the respondents. That means you have to see the level of your respondents, whether they are educated or whether they are not very educated, and also in terms of age, whether they are children, they are young adults, whether they are old people. Yeah, so you have to adjust your language. That means the way you ask questions accordingly. Yeah, the more important thing is the language must be clear to the respondents. They understand it. Yeah, do not use research language. Do not ask, for example, what are the factors that influence your thinking, because the term you use is the type of word that we use in our research, but it is not for everyday usage. So you're gonna adjust that. You're gonna ask using words that people can understand. Okay, so that's for number 1. Yeah, because the more important thing is clarity. Yeah, clarity, clear. Yeah. And the second thing is to be aware of his or her stance towards the respondent, and at the same time makes the respondent feel comfortable. All right, so you see the word that I highlighted in red. Yeah. So you must make sure that the respondent is comfortable. Okay. So you have to build the trust first, so that so whenever you speak to him or to her, she feels very comfortable, so that he or she can share the information. Yeah. Okay. Number three is to assume neutrality. Yeah. So that means that you are not siding with your respondent. You don't say that I support you. I also experience the same thing. Yeah. Or you say, I like you. I like your opinion. Yeah. Or the other extreme, you don't agree with your respondent. Yeah? For example, you say, I don't like what you are saying. No, it is wrong. Yeah. It is not true. Okay. So that means you are opposing. Okay. No, you cannot do that. Or you are siding with him. Also, you cannot do that. What you have to do is to be neutral. Yeah. Your role, remember your role. Your role is just to ask questions and then to dig out as much information as possible, yeah, and try to ask more questions in order to understand about the phenomenon. All right. So you don't have to side or to oppose his or her opinions. Okay. Okay. Now we go to the next one. These are the tips on how to ask good questions. Okay. Asking good questions. Example of good questions to ask are uh, four in order to get the information. But you have to see the situation first. You have to see whether you can ask this question to your respondents or your informants. Okay. Okay. Can you see the words that I highlighted in red? Okay. So there are four altogether. First is hypothetical questions. Second one is devil advocate questions. Number three is ideal position questions. And number four, interpretive questions. Okay, now I go to the first one first. Hypothetical questions. Okay, so hypothetical question is, the assumption questions. Yeah, it's probably not true, but you try to ask that questions. So hypothetical question is by asking what the respondent might do or what it might be uh, in a particular situation. All right. For example, if you are in uh, that situation, the crisis situation, what would you do? Okay. So you are not in that situation right now, but just assume if you are, yeah, in that situation, what would you do? So uh, these are one of the good questions, the approach of asking question that you can adopt in order to ask question, in order to get information. Okay, number two is devil's advocate questions. So when I mention the word devils, that means it doesn't mean evil. It means the opposing view. Okay. So devil advocate question means challenging the respondents to consider an opposing view. All right. Okay. So you try to uh, throw a challenge and ask uh, your interviewee to answer the questions. Yeah. For example, if you are not doing this, for example, what are other things that you can do? All right. Okay. Okay. Now we go to number three, ideal position questions. So the ideal position questions, by asking the respondent to describe an ideal situation. For example, if you got everything, yeah. For example, you are the boss of a company and you got everything. You got a good staff, you have money, you have big building, you have car and so on. What would you do? Yeah. So these are the ideal situation, and you ask the question, if you are in that situation, what would you do? Yeah, it is impossible to achieve that question because it is too ideal. Yeah, so whenever we want to decide anything, we have to face with some constraints, so we cannot uh, make a good decisions. Yeah, because there are things that we cannot get, for example, in terms of money, in terms of time, and so on. Yeah. So the ideal position questions try to paint an ideal situation and try to have insight, what people would do in such the ideal situation. Okay, number 4 is interpretive questions. That is by advancing tentative interpretation of what the respondent um, has to do, yeah, and ask for reaction. Okay, so first, interpretation of an event, and after that, you ask the respondents to respond, to give a comment on that situation. Okay, so these are among the ways to ask good questions in order to get answers. Okay, these are example of each of those. So we have here hypothetical questions, and we have devil advocate questions, we have ideal position questions, and we have interpretive question. Okay, so we go to the first one, hypothetical questions. Okay, so for example, you ask, suppose it is my first day in this professional development program. What would it be like? Okay, what would it be like? Okay, so after this, I'm going to ask you to give your own example. Okay, so hypothetical question, suppose it is my first day in this professional and development program. What would it be? Okay. Okay. Secondly, devil advocate questions. Okay. So you try to put forward, you try to put forth an opposing view and ask your respondent to respond to it. Okay. For example, you say, some teachers say that teachers who make use of L1 endanger students' foreign language learning. What would you say to them? All right. Okay. And then ideal position questions. What do you think the ideal training program would be like? Yeah. What aspect of language learning and teaching should a program emphasize? Okay. So that the ideal position. Okay. Now we go to the interpretive questions. What would you say that applying multiple intelligence theory in your language teaching had a positive effect on student learning? All right, so you pick an example and a concept, and then ask for response from your respondents. Okay, so that's interpretive questions. Okay, now we go to the next one. Okay, the next one is a question that you should avoid. Yeah, so in interview sessions, yeah, you are not supposed to ask this type of questions. Yeah, so questions to avoid are, first is multiple questions. In one question, you ask two questions actually. For instance, when you say, how do you feel about the instructors and the classes? So this is not good. Why? because there are two things. First is how do you feel about the instructors? That's number one. And number two is how do you feel about the classes? So in order to rectify the situation, you should break it down into two questions. First question is about the instructors, and the second question is about the classes. All right, so multiple questions. Do not ask two things in one questions. Yeah. First instructors and then classes. Do not ask that. Yeah. You should break it down into two questions. Okay, number two, you should not ask leading questions. Yeah. For example, you ask what emotional problems that you have since you are since losing your jobs. Why? Because we are not sure yet whether the person have emotional problem or not. Yeah. All right. So in order uh, to ask a better question, first you need to confirm. You need to ask other question first. For example, do you have any emotional problem? If the person says yes, and then you ask these questions. Yeah. If the person says no, you don't ask these questions. Yeah. So you can ask other questions. Yeah. If you ask these questions right away without confirming whether the person have emotional problems or not, so that's considered leading questions. You are trying to influence the interviewee to have certain belief. Yeah, you enforce your view on them. So let them ask, the question first, and after that you can ask some more questions. Yeah. So do not jump into the conclusion. Do not ask leading questions. Okay, number three, in qualitative in-depth interview, most of the questions supposed to be open questions, yeah, and not yes or no questions. So please do not ask too many yes or no questions because it shut down further information. Yeah, because it shut down further information. For example, if you ask, uh, 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 are you feeling okay? So the answer will be yes or no, only two. Yeah. But if you ask open questions like, how do you feel after you have uh, you have lost your job, for example, okay, and the person will give you uh, much information. Yeah. All right. So do not ask yes or no questions, but ask open-ended questions. All right. Okay. So we try to think about these questions to avoid. So I need your example. Okay. Please give me example. First is multiple questions. Second is okay. We go straight to yes or no questions. Okay. So for yes and no questions, you need to give example of yes and no. Plus, you need to give example of an open-ended questions. All right. So just two. Yeah. Number one and number three. Yeah. Okay. Can I give you around 10 minutes to write down your examples? All right. All right. Okay. I'll give you 10 minutes to write down your examples. Just for number one, multiple questions, and number three, yes or no questions. All right. So have you finished writing your own example to those two questions?
Yes, doctor.
All right. Okay. All right. So first is multiple questions. Give me your example of multiple questions. Okay. So we start with Grace or Fiona or Clara.
My question is, what do you think of the behavior of this mother and the child?
All right. So how to make it better? How to make it better?
Mhm.
Okay. So for example, if you want to ask that questions,
Mhm.
okay, you must correct the question first. Uh, so how do you
Okay.
correct the questions?
Okay. I understand.
Mm.
What do you think of the behavior of this mother?
All right. Okay. So two questions. Yeah. So you can break it down into two questions. From one questions, and then it becomes two questions. Okay. What about Clara?
I put two questions into
Mhm.
the one question. The first question is, what do you think the influence of parents on students' learning?
All right.
Second question is, what do you think the influence of students on schools on students, and put them together? What do you think the influence of parents on students' learning and the influence of schools on children?
All right. So let's take one example. Okay, can you give me one example first? One example which has, you know, two little questions inside.
Yeah, yes.
Yeah. Okay. So which one?
Oh, what do you think the influence of parents on students' learning and how it influenced?
All right. Okay. So that's the correct one. Okay. Give me example. The wrong one. The
The
one
wrong
which
one
has
is
two things. Yeah.
correct.
Yeah.
Wrong.
That one is correct. That one is correct. But the wrong one is
Oh,
the
what?
multiple questions.
Okay.
Yeah.
What do you think the influence of parents and schools on uh, students in learning?
All right. Okay. So because it has two little things,
Yes.
so if you really want to ask these two, you make it break it down into two questions.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ask that one first and then the second one. All right. So just remember that do not ask double barrel questions. Do not ask a question which has two things in there. Only one by one. Yeah. So you want to ask about uh, parents' influence. You want to ask about students' influence. You can ask the questions, but do not put this all together in one question. Never do that. Yeah. You can ask this question, but two questions in two questions. All right. What about Fiona?
Okay, doctor, my wrong question is, what do you think of going to school or staying at home?
Yes, very good. So how do you break it down into two questions?
Mm, according to advantage advantages
Mm-hmm.
on learning, what do you think about staying at home or going to school?
All right. I think you should ask two questions. Make it two questions.
Oh, two
Yeah.
questions.
Yeah. You do not put this all together in one sentence.
Yeah,
You,
okay.
you only need to ask two questions. Yeah, the incorrect one is you have multiple questions. Yeah, so
So,
that means
so
yeah, two
can I
things.
describe like this?
All right.
Which one is better for language learning, staying at home or going to school?
All right. Okay. You can ask that questions. You can ask that questions. But for example, if you want to uh, you want to have the respondents to answer both questions, the experience of stay at school and also the experience of staying at home. Yeah. So what you need to do is first ask the second questions, and then the respondent will answer it. Okay.
Okay.
After if finishing that, you ask about staying at home.
Okay.
All right. And after that, you can ask the question. So you think which one is better? Yeah, go to
Oh.
school or stay at home.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So that becomes the third questions.
No.
All right. Okay. Okay. Now we go to the what's the last one? Multiple questions and okay. I need to go back because I forgot full. Okay. So the last question is about okay, yes or no questions. All right, yes or no question. Give me the first is yes and no questions, and then the better way of asking questions if you want to know that information. Okay, yes and no questions. Now we are concentrating yes or no questions. All right. Okay, can you give your example?
Mm. My first yes or no question is,
Mm-hmm.
do you think that do you think that he has problem on communication? And then
All right.
the,
Okay.
the
Okay.
question,
So what could be the answer to this question?
what problem do you think he has?
Okay. So if you ask this question, what would be the respondent's answer?
He has problem on communication.
Okay. So possibly the respondent will answer yes or no. Only two things. So that's why it is not a good question. All right. Okay. So what's the better way of asking question using open-ended questions? So what is your example of open-ended questions?
What problem do you think he?
Yes. All right. Yeah, very good. Yeah. And to make it more friendly, uh, can you can you tell me what your problem is?
Mhm.
Okay. All right. So it is more friendly. All right. What about Clara?
Uh, is it right that students should attend extra interest class?
All right. So the answer, the possible answer.
Yes, it's right. Or no,
Yeah.
it's wrong.
Yeah, that's right. So what is your example of open-ended questions?
How do you think that students should attend extra
Yeah.
interest class?
All right. Okay. Very good. Yeah. So as long as the respondent don't answer yes or no. Yeah. So he or she will elaborate on his or her experience. Okay, what about Fiona? Your example, please, Fiona.
Yeah, my yes or no question is, will you keep on your study when you meet difficulties?
So the answer is?
The answer is yes, I will, or no, I won't.
All right, okay. All right, and your example of open-ended questions to replace this type of questions.
What will you do when you meet? What will you do on your study when you meet difficulties?
All right, okay, very good, Fiona. Okay, sometimes it is okay to ask close-ended questions, but after that, you straight away to go to open-ended questions. Okay, for example, is it true that you have gone there? Okay, and then the person answers yes, and then you ask open-ended question right away after that. Okay, why? Why did you go there? Okay, so that sort of thing. All right. Okay, thank you very much. I think you begins to understand, uh, questions that are good and also questions to be avoid. Now we go to the next one, question number 9. Okay, in interview questions, during interview sessions, apart from asking main questions and after getting the responses from your respondent, you need to ask more questions. You need to ask probing questions. Probing questions are small questions in order to get more information. Yeah. So what is probes? All right, okay. Probes are questions or comments that follow up something already asked. So you have your main questions, and after that, the respondent will answer it. And from respondent answer, you make a new question based on their answer. Yeah. And after that, you will get what you want, more information. Yeah. So the purpose is to identify something that is significant for learning. Yeah. There are many forms of probing. For example, first, ask for more detail. For example, you ask your respondent, can you give me, can you elaborate on that? Can you explain on that? Yeah. Asking for clarification. Yeah. Can you clarify? Okay. Before this, you have said that this and this and this. Can you clarify on that? Yeah. And also asking for example. Yeah. So you said that you really like learning. Yeah. During morning hours. Yeah. Can you give me an example what subject you like to learn during the wee hours of morning? Okay, according to Glessner and Peshkin, probes may take numerous forms. They range from silence to sounds, yeah, to a single word to complete sentences. Yeah. So these are the probes, not necessarily in terms of you ask questions, but you can also be silent because when you silent, it motivate the other person to answer your questions. Yeah. So and also you use minimalism. Yeah. Uh, okay, only a small word in order to ask them to give the example. Yeah. Sometimes you don't use a word. Yeah. Sometimes you just wait, be silent, and it motivate your respondent to give responses to whatever you are asking. Okay. Miriam reminds that an interviewer should avoid pressing too hard and too fast. Probing is certainly an art. To improve it, a researcher need practice. Okay, so the art of probing. First is you need to know how to probe. Yeah, and the 3 approaches are given here. For example, ask for more details. Secondly, ask for clarification. And thirdly, ask for examples. Okay, and Miriam remind us that you should not press too hard. Okay, for example, it's like forcing the other person to give more information. So you should do it naturally. Yeah, that's why Miriam is saying that probing is an art. Yeah, if you practice it, if you do the interview many times, and then you can get the skill. Yeah, so avoid pressing too hard or too fast. Yeah, so you just need to do it naturally. Okay, now we go to okay. You also need to use this in your assignment. Last assignment, you need to interview your respondents. Apart from the main questions, there will be three main questions that you need to ask. But apart from that, in order to get more information, you should also ask other questions. So these are probing questions. Now we go to the okay, last. Yeah, there are a few more slides before we finish this topic. All right, this is regarding transcriber. Okay, transcribing is take a long time to do it because you need to type word by word. You need to type word by word. Yeah, verbatim transcription. So verbatim means word by word. Yeah, so whatever is said by the respondent, you need to write it down. Yeah. So verbatim means word by word. Yeah. So word by word transcription of a recorded interview is tedious and time consuming. Yeah. So you must spend hours and hours in order to transcribe 1 hour interview. The actual interview is only 1 hour, but when you write down the conversation, when you write down the transcription, yeah, it takes you many hours, not just 1 hour, probably 5 to 10 hours for one interview. So the question is asking, is it good to hire transcribers? Yeah, okay, so it's okay to hire transcribers, but it is better to do it yourself. Why? Because hiring transcribers has some limitation. First, it is expensive. Yeah, so you need to see how many pages are there. So you have to pay according to how many pages the transcription is. Yeah. Okay, but the more important thing is number 2. Okay, the transcribers do not get intimate familiarity with the data. Yeah, because the transcribers only transcribe and he or she doesn't know what was happening in the interview. Yeah, so it is a bit difficult to to understand the situation. If you yourself do the transcribing, it is better, because you experience the interview yourself, yeah, and you see the person face to face in person, yeah. So you are familiar with the data, and the transcriber is unfamiliar with the data, yeah. Okay, but you can use, somewhere in between. For example, you need to chip in. Okay, you hire the transcribers, but if there are problems, you need to chip in. For example, if it is hard to transcribe because it is not clear what the informants was saying, so you need to chip in that. You need to you need to listen to the recorded conversation, and you need to give ideas what really happened in there. Okay, an alternative way is using interview log, yeah, but Mariam says that this can only be used late in the study, not in the beginning of the study. Okay, so there are some problems in interview. So I need okay, so we go to this one first. How to maintain neutrality? Yeah. Okay, I think in the earlier part of our lecture, I was saying that it is important for a researcher to maintain his or her neutrality. Yeah. So whenever you interview a person, okay, do not side with him and do not oppose his or her view. You just need to maintain your neutrality. You just need to interview and to record the conversation. Yeah. So these are the tips. These are the guides. First, avoid agreeing or disagreeing with a respondent. So probably what the informant is saying is against your personal belief, but you need to be patient. So you need to acknowledge this is his or her view or opinion. Yeah. So do not oppose. Yeah. Because we are in the middle of the conversation. Okay. Secondly, avoid indicating that the participant answer is right or wrong. Yeah. So you do not support or you do not oppose. Avoid indicating a participant answer is right or wrong. Yeah. Okay, number 3, avoid suggesting an answer. Okay, for example, you ask them, what are factors that influence your learning? Yeah, and then during the session, your informant give some answers. Yeah, but you give a clue. Yeah, what about ICT? For example, ICT. Okay, so you giving him a clue in order to answer that. Yeah, so you don't have to do that. Yeah, so if the respondent mention about ICT, and then after that you can ask probing questions. Yeah, and number 4, avoid giving opinions during the interview. Yeah, avoid giving opinion during the interview. Yeah, so you don't have to give your own opinion. You just have to listen to what your respondent have to say. Yeah, so otherwise it becomes bias. Yeah, so try to avoid giving your own opinion. You just need to listen. Yeah, you just need to listen to the answers by your informant.